Comics, as a medium, have often been used throughout time to make commentary on life and society, while drawing the reader in with amazing, fantastical stories. Spider-Man, for example, functions as a metaphor for puberty, and a boy struggling with changes his body goes through at Peter Parker's age. You got X-Men, which addresses bigotry and through the struggles of the mutants mirrors the real-life civil rights movement. And then, there's the Zootopia abortion comic, which is about abortion. So for today's episode of Tales from the Internet, let's take a look at the Brazilian comic artist William Borba's modern classic, I Will Survive. This video is sponsored by Matchmasters. Matchmasters is a game for your mobile devices in which two players compete head-to-head to match pieces on a board and get the highest score. There's a lot of powerful boosters, exciting game modes, and different ways to strategize and win. Matchmasters is a lot of fun to play with friends, but it also has special themed solo game modes. Alright, so what I want to do here is get enough points to get to that next level before my turns run out. Try to get matches of 4 or 5 to get extra turns and fill up that bar for the boosters with blue matches, which doesn't take up a turn. I didn't do that on purpose, but like, let's pretend I did. You see, that's the boost. Can't see anything good, so I'm gonna use that scramble. And there, that's the first tier done. The game also has a variety of powerful boosters that really open up the strategy. There's also endless game modes that change daily, trophies and leaderboards with tons of rewards and prizes. Matchmasters is free to install, free to play, and ad-free. Just click the link in the description to download Matchmasters. Complete the in-game rewards calendar to win daily free gifts, as well as a chance to win a $500 Amazon gift card. Winners will be contacted on January 28th. Zootopia, released in 2016, is an animated film in which Disney once again takes us to a world populated by anthropomorphic animals, in which predator and prey live peacefully side by side. It follows the story of a straight-laced rookie cop, Judy Hopps, who finds herself in an unlikely partnership with a sleazy con artist fox, Nick Wilde. And Zootopia, probably more than any other animated film I've ever seen, is striking in the sense that it feels like it's specifically made for furries. Like, there's an appeal for furries with anything that would have anthro characters, and there's some characters that furries have latched onto throughout time, like a Sally Acorn, for example. But this one, to me, so clearly had them in mind. I mean, when this one came out, people, and I'm talking like non-furries, were quick to point out how uncomfortably thick Judy Hopps' design was. It gave her a touch of that Pixar mom ass. And past that, the style just looks like furry art. I mean, yeah, it's anthro characters, but not all anthro characters look like furry art. It's kind of hard to articulate, but I'm sure you know exactly the style I'm talking about. Like, if you had a furry artist draw a rabbit, it's not going to look like Bugs Bunny. Like, even if it's not a sexualized drawing, it's still going to have that furry style. And then you got one of the main characters being a fox. I don't know what it is. It seems like 99% of furries, they're either wolves or foxes. And then you also have some scenes like the one with the giant Judy Hopps that furries seem to think is made with them in mind. But probably the most clear evidence is the acknowledgement of the furry community, and even directly marketing towards them, with furry meetup groups being asked to post about the film in exchange for merch. A far cry from the days where animators were less than enthused about the furry community. And this embrace of furries has left Zootopia with a far more active online fan community than many other similar animated films. And when you have such an active online community, you're going to get things like the infamous Zootopia abortion comic. So you have this Brazilian artist, Borba. Borba had been a professional illustrator for decades, and he had a deviant account art for fun. You can look into the account and you see that most of his work has more of a classic comic book style. In fact, he had long maintained the rule to not produce fan art. In part because he was worried about potential copyright issues, but also he believed that doing fan art betrayed a lack of creativity. And one thing you can say about him, we got no lack of creativity here. But in 2016, after the release of Zootopia, he felt compelled to break his fan art embargo. Partially because of how much he loved the film, but also because he felt inspired by pieces that other people made, both in the style and in how they used comics to tell new stories with these characters. And thus, throughout 2016, Borba begins to make his own short comedic Zootopia comics, such as one where Nick pranks Judy by sneaking up on her, only to get scared he accidentally killed her. The comics are pretty simple and well drawn, and people seem to like them. But now that he's gotten his feet wet in the fan art side of things, he wanted a new challenge. He wanted to make a more dramatic Zootopia comic. Thus, from March to May of 2017, Borba begins to publish pages of his comic, I Will Survive, a black and white fan comic that flexes all the technical prowess of a several decades experienced industry professional, in a story about abortion in the Zootopia world. It begins with Judy in the bathroom looking at a pregnancy test, which turns out to be positive, so she struggles to wake up Nick and give him the bad news, which he thinks is a prank at first. Of course, the elephant in the room: how does a fox get a rabbit pregnant? That should not be physically possible. Granted, we are talking about a world in which talking animals have jobs as police, so I guess you can't really pick and choose where the line of what is and isn't realistic is. At the very least, the writer and director of Zootopia have remained open to the possibility of interspecies breeding in interviews.
There's a general sexual objectification of Shakira's character, but because she's a celebrity. but is that okay? Like, if in a sequel, could Nick
wonderful.
Yeah,
you know, I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Better than okay.
Well, it's like it's like our own world. I think it feels like it's a very open-minded society. It feels like animals fall in love.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, I think so.
Who are we to judge?
Yeah. So then, could Nick and Judy have a romance? Then
they could.
What would their kids be?
Funnies?
Funny.
Or boxes?
Once Nick realizes that Judy is telling the truth, he's actually really happy about it, much to Judy's surprise and dismay. Judy does not want this baby, prompting a several pages long argument, and also an explanation that they didn't use protection because of how rare interspecies births are. Judy also worries that the mixed baby might be some kind of freak, or that it might be too big for her. She's a little fox baby, bursting her at the seams like O.J. Simpson's glove. She also worries about her career, so Nick is like, oh, you would kill our baby for your career? Leading to probably the most iconic image in this comic, the smack. So Nick packs his bags and starts to leave. Nick asks what would have happened if Judy's mother decided to abort her, and then he pleads one last time. For God's sake, Judy, give this unborn child the opportunity to do the same. I beg you, please let your light continue to shine through him or her. But her mind's already made up. And as Judy tries to get Nick to stay, he notes that she should have lied about the abortion. So he leaves with cuts on his face and a tear in his eye. Where's she going? Don't worry. I will survive.
He said it! He said it!
He walks out the door and Judy is left with the final narration. Nothing lasts forever. Even an apparently everlasting love that has triumphed over the odds, and many challenges may eventually come to an end. So he posts this, and at first he gets the normal kinds of comments you might expect on this sort of thing on DeviantArt. Some people liked it, some people didn't like it, some people were surprised that it ended where it ended. But it's not until December that this comic breaches containment and starts to spread elsewhere online, where an amazed non-furry public learns of the Zootopia abortion comic. It's going viral with commentary, memes, the obligatory loss and whatnot edits. Perhaps most popularly an edit of the comic in which Judy and Nick are distraught over Arby's closing down. It's not that furry pregnancy art isn't commonplace. I mean, we've all seen that drawing where Shrek is pregnant with Batman's baby and the baby is Sonic the Hedgehog. We've all seen that. But this sort of stuff, it's usually just, relegated to the realm of quick MS Paint doodles. Not professional art with lengthy, in-depth dialogue that gives serious thoughts to all sides of a real-life hot-button political issue, in which real cartoon Disney animals have abortions. And what adds even more fuel to the fire, now you have people saying that this is a pro-life comic by a Christian fundamentalist who is using Zootopia to propagandize. Thus, by December, Borba's comments filled with pages upon pages of earnest debate on the abortion issue. Once again, inspired by a comic in which the rabbit from Zootopia gets an abortion. Borba, of course, rejected their analysis. Hello, I've seen this comic before, and I'm informed that your comic became popular because some people claim this comic is pro-life. Is this true that you and/or this comic is pro-life? The answer is negative for both sides of your question. And he would later clarify in a more detailed blog post. About my Zootopia fan comics. There are many stories created by fans telling about the life of Judy and Nick beyond the film. Several of them, both fanfic and fan comic, occur in dystopian-like alternate universes, or talk about police mysteries. There are also those sweet and gentle stories that show our furry heroes in a cheerful and carefree family life. Well, from the beginning, when I started to create the series of fan comics about Zootopia, I decided I'd stay away from these kinds of plots. Besides, I wanted to make stories that were really different from the others. It would not make sense for me to create stories similar to those that have already been made. I wanted something with my brand, my way of seeing things, no matter how much it cost me. The main reason that led me to create these stories is fun. Mine and those who, for some reason, like them. I did not create them to run for the Pulitzer Prize or the Nobel of Literature, nor to be transformed into TV series or to get to the big screen. Fun. Capisci? This is the best part of being a fan. The ability to create stories about your favorite characters without any concern for canons, headcanons, and the fuck. But what guided me was mainly the following question. What if? This question was the basis of everything related to Zootopia I did so far. Take a look. 1. What if Nick decided to prank Judy on Halloween? Night Howler's effect. What if Judy wanted to use makeup? ZPD's night party. What if Stu weren't Judy's father? Hop's family ties. What if Judy gets pregnant but she didn't want the baby? I'll survive. Well, I think you figured it out. Still, Borba's insistence that he was just presenting a scenario and not trying to push any sort of agenda went largely ignored. And although he enjoyed the memes people made, losing control of this narrative annoyed him. At first, he responds with the parody comic entitled Whatever. Nick, I'm pregnant, and I don't want this child. Yeah, whatever. And that probably should have been the end of it. After all, at first he insisted this was just going to be a one-off like all of his other Zootopia comics. But by 2018, he had changed his mind and decided to make a full-on sequel to this comic entitled Born to Be Alive. A year has passed since the first comic, and now a drunken Nick who had quit the police force has come crawling back, banging on Judy's door. He ignores her threats of arresting him, and she lets him in after a vague suicide threat, a ruse that he quickly drops. Didn't I tell you, Fluff? I will always survive. Always. Just like the title again. Judy confirms that she did have the abortion, and Nick breaks down, begging for her to take him back. And during this breakdown, we get a glimpse into the past year with Nick's dealings with prostitutes, who, by the way, the prostitutes would get their own side comic by Borba. Ultimately, though, Judy could not forgive Nick for walking out on her during such a time of need, especially since the procedure apparently went badly. Nick pleads and grabs onto Judy's arm, hurting her in the process, mirroring the original where Judy had smacked Nick. And a lot of people who interpreted the original comic as being pro-Nick homed in on that scene, making him seem like the good guy. So I guess this scene in this comic was Borba's way of being like, no, actually look, see, now Nick is bad. So all this commotion in the apartment wakes someone up. The big reveal. It's Judy's new lover. Another fox. A lady fox. That's right, Judy Hopps is now a lesbian. We also learned that apparently Judy was the first rabbit in all of history to get an abortion. And it was during this historical hospital visit where she met her new partner, Shay the Vixen. Nick can't believe it. You're not like that, Judy. You're just fooling yourself. Please dump this lessie and get back to your true self. Don't you dare call her that. In his anger, Nick shoves Shay to the ground, hurting her before Judy ends his rampage and kicks him out once and for all. Now with Nick gone, the black and white art turns to color and everything is all good now. The end. Reading this comic, I could just picture Borba sitting there day in and day out, watching his comments. Every single one annoying him more than the last, until he's finally like, fuck it, I gotta do this. It's a piece that very, very obviously only exists as a response to the original, even going so far as referencing the Arby's meme, and taking great care to make Nick now seem like the bad guy, obviously to address the criticism that Nick came across too sympathetic in the original, which of course sabotaged his attempt to appear neutral. Although now it seems that perhaps he went too much in the other direction. But in any case, he did manage to succeed in getting some people to reconsider his intentions with the original comic. Thing is though, although this comic got some play within the online Zootopia fandom, it largely went ignored by the outside world. If Borba really wanted to regain control of this narrative in the mainstream like he wanted to, he would have to go a little bit bigger. He needed something that would capture people's imaginations like the Zootopia abortion did. And this next thing he comes up with, it did work a lot better. Let me tell you, once he released this one, I got so many messages of people telling me like, yo, you have to see what the Zootopia abortion guy did now. I did not get that for the second comic, but I did get that for the third comic, which is now a part of what he refers to as the Trilogy of Life. So part 3 of this story, Never Say Goodbye, releases over the course of late 2021. This one features full color illustrations and goes far, far into the future. Nick is now some sort of scoutmaster, and while he's out with the scouts, we learn that Judy is now the mayor of Zootopia. Nick and Judy see each other, and presumably they haven't seen each other since the second comic, and they have a cordial conversation as their security detail looks on like a bunch of sourpusses. The kids are impressed that Nick used to know the mayor, and Nick actually does have his own kid now. In the course of this conversation, we also learn that apparently there's a radical group fighting against her re-election because of her push for mammal equality. And we can tell that these are bad guys because we see them seek healing over ram skull flags. Because of course there's Nazis in the version of Zootopia that also has abortions. So then Shay turns up with Judy's kids, a little baby fox, and a zebra that at first I thought was supposed to be like handy capable or something. Because of the way they drew him. I mean, he's all cockeyed with a big bulbous head. He's all fully grown, but having his hand still held. I don't think he's supposed to have a syndrome of some kind though, I think that's just how Borba drew him. But in any case, Nick apologizes to Shay. Shay accepts the apology. Nick and Judy promise to stay in touch with each other, and after everyone's all caught up, it's a big happy ending. Nick and the kids go off to the amusement park. The end. Of course, that's not where the story really ends. Warning. Starting on Sunday, October 10th, the 8 extra pages of Never Say Goodbye will be published here on DeviantArt. However, as some people may find the content controversial, or even get offended by it, I would strongly recommend these people not to read the extra pages. If you liked what you read in this comic so far and do not want to see anything controversial or offensive, stick with the 27 pages already published and avoid reading or even seeing the extra pages at any cost. You have been warned. William Borba. The extra pages begin in black and white. Judy and Shay are in a suspiciously familiar looking convertible car with the top down, flanked by heavy security detail. I feel like you guys know where this is going. And then, crosshairs. They do the JFK assassination on Judy Hopps. I can't help but think that Borba saw that furry drawing, the one that I talked about in the God of Furries video, where a god furry causes Franz Ferdinand to get assassinated. I can't help but think he saw that and was like, yo, actually, that's a pretty good idea. So, and after Judy has been sniped on the grassy knoll, we see the culprits. A fascist elephant disguised as a bear, and a communist bear disguised as a donkey. And they proceed to squabble amongst themselves as the cops take them. This is some real biting political commentary over here. On one hand, this feels like he's trying even harder to prove his neutrality to the audience. But then on the other hand, it kind of feels like he's just telling everyone who read too much into his original comic to go fuck themselves. Also, it should be noted, there's a twist to this that when people reposted the Judy Hopps thing, it tended to not get reposted along with it. After they get arrested, we find out that the sniper rifles were actually full of cherry jam and not bullets. Cherry jam that the handy-capable zebra proceeds to lick off of Judy's head. So I know a lot of people heard about this and thought, oh, like Judy's dead in the Zootopia abortion comic universe. What a horrible thing. So understand that in the Zootopia abortion continuity, Judy is in fact still alive. She's just sticky. And with this trilogy having come to a conclusion, Borba said that he's now done with Zootopia comics. For now at least, unless he feels like it again. But he also promised to do a remake of the trilogy into one single long comic, with more pages, as well as sounds and animations. He also promises that this one will be a lot more dramatic, because he felt that the original Zootopia abortion comic was too comedic. Anyway, that's all for the story of the Zootopia abortion comic. The 2014 World Cup was one of the most shocking events in sports history. Now, you guys know that I'm not really a big sports guy, but I can get into soccer a bit every 4 years. I remember it so clearly. I'm sitting down in a German beer garden in Queens. I'm seated at a table in the corner with a bunch of my friends. Steins overflowing with beer, plates full of Jaeger Schnitzel, and the World Cup is on the TV. And none of us were ready for what we would see. The Brazilian team is defeated in the finals in their own country. Not even close, they're completely blown out of the water. They lose 8-1, beaten by, of all teams, North Korea. Wait, what do you mean that that's not what happened? Germany beat Argentina in the finals. And North Korea hasn't been in a World Cup since 2010, in which they only scored 1 goal. Could I have possibly been bamboozled? Ladies and gentlemen, this is the story of how a Brazilian blogger trolled millions of people around the world, as well as several news agencies, all by pretending to be North Korea. Outside of a small handful of uncontacted tribes, North Korea is probably the most mysterious place on Earth. The flow of information both in and out is so tightly controlled by the government. And most of what gets over here is so fraught with information it has to get corrected a million times. I mean, just think about how often we hear that Kim Jong-un is sick or dead or dying. And of course, such an atmosphere of misinformation makes it a prime target for trolls. And perhaps no one has ever done a better job of this than a Brazilian blogger named Sid Cidoso. So currently, Sid is an extremely popular Brazilian Twitch streamer. But previously, he was best known for his blog, Now Salvo. Now Salvo is a collection of comedic articles and videos created by Sid, and it would often recruit his audience to participate in certain tasks. For example, you had one that was about getting a nerd out of the friend zone. And then you had another where readers had to think of something where they would be the only Brazilian in the world doing it at any given moment. Before the North Korea prank, his most notorious prank was the Cala Boca Galvão prank. So during the 2010 World Cup, you would sometimes see on Twitter the hashtag Cala Boca Galvão trending. Brazilians understood what this meant, but the tag would sometimes surface for foreigners who didn't. So Sid came up with a campaign to explain to foreigners what was going on here. Through a poster and a video narrated in English, it was revealed that the Galvão bird was a Brazilian species that was going extinct. And by just tweeting Cala Boca Galvão, which was said to mean Hale Galvão, 10 cents would be donated to the Galvão Institute. This, of course, being an organization whose goal was to preserve these birds. And it worked. The campaign was so successful that Cala Boca Galvão was trending for 14 days straight. But of course, there was no such institute. And Cala Boca does not mean Hale. And also, there's no such bird as the Galvão. Galvão actually referred to a broadcaster, Galvão Bueno, who a lot of people found kind of annoying. And Cala Boca means shut up. So he had gotten thousands of English speakers to tweet at this guy they never heard of to shut up, all the while these people think they're just saving a bird. But it was his next World Cup prank that would be the most far-reaching. On July 11th, 2014, a YouTube channel named Korea News Backup published a video showing that North Korea had completely blown their competition out of the water, beating Japan 7-0, USA 4-0, and China 2-0, winning their group stage. Now, they would advance to the finals. Their first opponent, Portugal, who of course in reality had beaten them 7-0 in 2010. This video goes super viral with over 8 million views in just 3 days. People are seeing this and dying at how misinformed North Koreans are, because, you know, their government's feeding them all this fake news. The story gets picked up extremely quickly by news outlets, some of them mentioning in their reporting that this was most likely satirical or fake, while others initially reported that it was a real video but later corrected their articles to state that it was fake. And others were just fully convinced that this was a real thing that North Korea was telling its citizens. And on the surface, if you look at it, this channel looks to be a legitimate news channel. It has several months of what appears to be genuine but relatively unremarkable news from North Korea. News that would actually continue to be posted after this viral video. And then a few days later, on the 15th, a second North Korean soccer video would be released. This one reveals that North Korea had taken the whole World Cup, whipping Brazil like a government mule in their own backyard with a score of 8-1. It wouldn't be until July 24th, a couple weeks later, that Sid would finally come forward and take credit for the prank in an article and a video. In the article, he explains how it all came together. It was the newest entry in a series he had called Challenge Accepted. Funny enough, in the beginning of his article, he mentions another entry in the series, in which he mentions that his audience is helping him create the first scripted porn film written entirely on the internet. If you watch my channel, you know that he was actually beaten to the punch to this, because the decade prior, the Something Awful forums had written swap.avi, which is another topic that I covered on this channel. That being said though, the Brazilians were responsible for turning that dream into a reality, so I guess close enough. In any case, he notes that although he usually goes about these stunts very publicly, this particular prank made it necessary for him to work completely in secret. It begins with the creation of the channel Korea News Backup, which went a long way in selling this as a potential real thing. It had actually been created 3 months before the prank, and he wanted it to seem as if someone was intercepting a satellite signal from North Korea and uploading it to YouTube. So over the course of those months, they slowly uploaded legitimate North Korean news videos that they found. The videos were all from different sources and different time periods, but who's really gonna sit there and check all that just to verify a soccer video? And of course, neither Sid nor anybody he works with spoke fluent Korean like you would hear from a native. so he had to hire a voice actor. It was actually pretty difficult at first. He had gotten in touch with 5 different South Korean voice actors, and each of them refused because being in South Korea, they're worried about the ramifications of doing this. Finally, he wound up speaking to a person he had worked with on the Kalaboka Galval campaign, Nando Pax. He recalled that Nando had a production company that worked in multiple languages. And sure enough, through this company, he was able to secure a Korean actor. Granted, he asked them to do a North Korean accent and they refused. And funny enough, some people who watched the video did notice that it was a South Korean accent. But for the overwhelming majority of viewers, South Korean was good enough. It was then up to his video editor, Davi, to make this thing convincing. Here's a Google translated account of all the things that went into it. There are some videos of North Korea national team games out there. Friendlies, the Asian Cup, old qualifiers, etc. There are some from state-owned newspapers in the country too. The big challenge was putting all of this together in a rough and journalistic tone. Yes, the parade had to look lame on purpose. That's how it is there. Looking like a newspaper from the 80s/90s was essential. Not to mention that the presenter's mouth should have a small delay, characteristic of satellite broadcasting copies. He'd also noted that in the section that shows North Korea fans losing their minds over Kim Jong-un, they had simply used fans of Chile because their flag has the same colors as North Korea, which I guess is a step up from hiring Chinese people to pretend to be North Korea fans. But with all of this work to put this thing together, you couldn't do all that and just gamble on whether or not it goes viral. And it's not like someone's just gonna randomly stumble upon Korea news backup. And if they did do that, who's to say they're gonna sit there and actually watch the videos to find this clip? At the same time, if Sid with his reputation just shared it himself, it would be pretty obvious what was going on. So he put this task on a closed inner circle of Malsalvo readers that he called Zona. He describes them as being so good they can even discover the color of your mother's panties without you knowing it. He had them change their Twitter avatars to cleavage to be more attention-getting. Then he would have them tweet the video at people he described as the ones who would pay the most attention to something weird happening in a communist country. Every single one of their 7 main targets shared the video in some capacity. I'm also completely unsurprised to find that one of my friends, Brazilian YouTuber Izzy Nobre, is involved in this. Izzy was tasked with creating an English language Reddit thread about the video. This way, if someone was searching for it, they would now be under the impression that this story is going viral in the US. As he puts it, to Brazilians, if it's foreign, it's true. Ultimately, the first real news outlet to bite would be Metro. And from that point, it was only a matter of time as every site is just spinning every other site's reporting. Eventually, little by little, people would find little bits of evidence that the video wasn't legitimate. Issues such as the accent, or that archival footage from a bunch of different time periods seemed put together haphazardly, but nobody was really fully convinced one way or the other whether or not it was real or fake. And the people who did think it was fake were attributing it to sources like 4chan or South Korean forums. Nobody, not a single person, suspected that it was Sid until he just came out and admitted it. Ultimately, it does make you wonder how many of the stories we hear about North Korea may be just as fake. I mean, you could basically hear any ridiculous thing that happened in North Korea and say, hey, I mean, it's North Korea, everything's crazy over there. Up is down and down is up. Believe anything you say about them. I swear, someone's gonna take this out of context and try to say I'm a North Korea apologist or something. Anyway, I want to give a big shout out to the viewer who put me onto this story, especially since I'm pretty sure this has never been fully covered in English. He's an indie game developer who goes by VileVidya. Check him out on Twitter and itch.io. Like many of Sega's console endeavors, the Dreamcast was a system well ahead of its time. It was the first console released of the 6th-gen systems, beating PlayStation 2 and GameCube to market by years. It introduced the world to legendary titles like Shenmue, Jet Set Radio, Resident Evil Code Veronica, Seaman, among others. And perhaps most importantly, it was the first home console that was internet ready right out of the box. A ton was put into promoting its online play, such as a campaign with Limp Bizkit, including ads telling you to look out for Fred Durst, who, according to crazy ass moments in nu metal history, was said to be really good at Quake 3. Also, Fred Durst autographed Dreamcast and go for a decent amount of money. It's such an amazing console. Doesn't it get you excited? Maybe a little too excited? Well, it definitely did for one boy in Brazil. So for this episode of Tales from the Internet, let's talk about what I'm told is one of the most legendary internet stories to come out of Brazil. The boy who nutted it inside of his brand new Sega Dreamcast. Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, we're going back to Brazil. I think there's a tendency on the English-speaking side of the internet to just think of it as the whole internet and all of its famous stories like Swamps of Dagobah, Vagina Bacon, Hello My Future Girlfriend. But for every language there's internet stories that are just as infamous as any of those that we rarely if ever get to hear about. So my curiosity was piqued when a Brazilian viewer, Gustavo Costa, told me the story of the Brazilian cum Dreamcast, supposedly one of the Brazilian internet's most infamous stories. And when I spoke about this on stream, a number of Brazilian viewers corroborated that yeah, everyone knows this story. So here we go, the story of a boy from Brazil named Leonam. And note that I have two different translations of the story that I'm working with here. They're different from each other in ways that are very subtle, but in some cases kind of important. I'm piecing it together to the best of my ability, but if I get something wrong with it, definitely let me know. So it was originally posted in 2004 to forumsbr.hypermart.net. The original posts aren't on the Internet Archive, unfortunately, however, they've all been compiled together in a text document. The collection of posts begins with a disclaimer. Attention, this message has a little adult content. It is not recommended for females, avert your eyes ladies, or boys under the age of 11 who are likely does not have the knowledge required to understand the subject of the text. What's great about that is the boy in the story is 13, so it's like, yo, us 13-year-olds, we're grown enough to talk about these kinds of things. You 11-year-olds, though, you're gonna have to wait till you're grown-ups like us 13-year-olds. It's the funniest text of my life. The worst thing is that Leonan is real, really. You'll see. The 13-year-old boy, Leonan, had received a Sega Dreamcast for his birthday. This was not even a month prior, and as he had said, he had done everything possible to get his parents to buy this for him. Then one day, he's playing a pirated version of Crazy Taxi. Finishes up, takes out Crazy Taxi, so he can replace it with the boot CD you need to play pirated games. But with the lid still open, suddenly everyone else goes out. He has the home all to himself, so he gets an idea. Now's his chance. He's gonna go look at some naked ladies on the computer and rub one out. So he's standing in front of his computer looking at a website that he found on these very forums. He's doing his thing and he gets to the point where he can no longer contain himself. He doesn't want to get anything on his monitor or his keyboard though that are right in front of him, so he quickly turns to the left. Unfortunately for Leonan, what is to the left of him is his still open Sega Dreamcast, which he promptly nuts inside of. At this point, he doesn't know whether to laugh or cry. He cleans it up to the best of his ability, but that dry residue is just too much for that poor laser lens. That shit's not working anymore. So cry it is. Desperate for solutions, Leonan goes to the forum to see if anyone has any ideas about what he can do.
My mother is going to kill me when she finds out that paid 750 reals and I already broke it. It is on warranty, but how will I tell the men on the store? How will I clean the lens now? Help me please. I will never masturbate again in my life.
Unfortunately, since the original thread is an archive, we can't see people's responses. I imagine it was mostly just people laughing their asses off at him though. The next day, Leonan makes another thread. He rushes back home to check up on his Dreamcast. However, as soon as he gets through that door, his mother's already waiting for him with the Dreamcast on the couch, looking like what he describes as a general. She looks like she wants to kill him. He's sweating bullets at this point, and the first thing she says, "Leonam, what did you drop in this video game?" He asks her why, and she mentions that she brought it to the store, and when the guy opened it up, there was a white area of something. Something was spilled in there, which is not covered by the warranty, so he was shit out of luck. And the mother wanted explanations for why the expensive system they had just gotten him for his birthday is already broken. And she also wanted explanations for why it smells like cheese. Actually, knowing what the mother didn't know, I also want explanations for why it smells like cheese. Like, what the fuck are they feeding this kid? His legs are shaking and he doesn't have any answers for her, so he runs back to his room and locks himself in. And from his room, he calls up Tectoy. Tectoy being the company that distributes Sega consoles in Brazil, even having some Brazil exclusive releases like a wide variety of special master systems. Leonan begins by assuring the Tectoy representative that this is not a prank call, and he proceeds to tell him about how he nutted it inside of his Dreamcast. Of course, the Tectoy representative dies laughing, and when he finally catches his breath, he tells him to not try to clean the lens himself, but to just take it back to the store. Which, of course, as we've learned, is not really an option, so Leonan is fucked. Also, he thinks at this point his parents figured out what really happened. His reason for this being that he's sure his mother knows what cum smells like, because on Tuesdays and Thursdays every week, his parents bone all night. At this point, he's also considering just admitting the truth to his father, and he also laments that he didn't have a younger brother to blame this on. He finishes by asking if maybe he should try to clean the lens with alcohol or water or anything else they suggest. There are a few suggestions and a little bit of ribbing, which takes us to the third post. He begins by thanking two forum users, Eric and Francisco, for helping him, then goes on to make a confession.
Okay, as you are being nice with me, I got to confess something. I broke my promise. It is stronger than me. I did one when I was locked in my room. Sorry. This time I aimed right and I didn't hit anything.
He also mentions that the tech toy guy suggested trying to use one of those disc cleaner things. If you're unfamiliar, they're those discs that have those little brushes on them, and when you run the console, it brushes away the dust and whatever particles. I've never found them to be particularly useful, and you're probably not surprised to hear that this did not clean up the dried cum. He also addresses a forum user named Lestat. Lestat mocked his poor jizz control and acted this was his first time. Leonin responded that this was not his first time, in fact it was his 5th time. He also addresses people who are asking if they can come to his neighborhood and see if they can take a look at it. Which, thankfully, he realized that this was a really bad idea, so he's not doing that. He was also worried about some guy who is making a website documenting the whole thing. He also makes a reference that I'm not quite sure about.
I told my colleagues what is happening to me, and my class has even given me the nickname Gonzaguinha. You know why? That accordionist.
So I'm not familiar with Gonzaguinha, so I looked him up. And it turns out he died suddenly and tragically after being hit by a truck. Which, you know, might be applicable to the impending dread of this situation. But Gonzaguinha wasn't known for playing accordion, his father Luis Gonzaga was. I'm not sure if he got the guys mixed up or what. Because maybe the joke wasn't about the sudden death, but rather how it looks to play the accordion, although I don't know who, like, jerks off like they're playing an accordion. Ultimately, now he's looking for help not just with the Dreamcast, but how to deal with his parents.
I have to delete my computer's history because she checks everything. So it's thought if she enters this site and discovers everything. What a shame, and what a shit that I'm going to take. You may even think I'm childish, but I'm only 13 years old. I'm figuring things out now. It is by making mistakes that you learn. Do you think I was going to do this soon on my Dreamcast? Help is just what I need.
Then we get to the fourth and final post.
Guys, finally my terror came to an end. Thank God. I didn't get caught, but it was much worse, I swear.
Believing that his parents would eventually figure out what really happened, he takes his father aside.
I said, Dad, for the love of God, you swear if I tell you something you won't say to anybody. He said okay. I believed. So I closed my eyes and told him it was me who broke the video game. But it wasn't on purpose, I cummed on it. He laughed. Laughed till he cried. Then I said, I didn't mean it to happen. I'm really embarrassed right now, but that's how it happened.
His father scolded him a bit for visiting porn sites, but then he told him he had a way to fix everything. And then finally, after this going on for days, Leon could finally breathe a sigh of relief. He's sitting on bed, playing his Game Boy, then his mother walks in. Big smile on her face with his father in hand. And she says, Leo, me and your father have something we have to talk to you about.
You are turning into a grown boy. My ears started to get red. You are not a little kid anymore. Your body will have changes, your voice will change. You are turning into a little teen. They didn't already told me the same thing on school. My mother said, when you want to do that, go to the bath so you won't get things dirty, and after you've done it, wash your hands so you won't get things dirty with it. You can imagine how I am right now.
But it doesn't end there. She calls all 6 of his aunts to let them know that their little boy is all grown up and jerking it. She also tells his grandmother, as well as the girl who works at the house who he notes is hot. Afterwards, he gets a phone call from his grandmother telling him that he has no morals and he has to stop this immediately or he's gonna burn in hell. And he notes that his family likes to gossip a lot, so by now all of his cousins definitely know, so he's not looking forward to seeing them again. Ultimately, his father takes the Dreamcast to the store to get repaired. They're charging 450 reals for just the lens. That's without labor costs. So for that price, Leon considers just simply importing a Japanese Dreamcast. He says that's probably better anyway. Leonin, who is now traumatized by masturbation forever, leaves with these words of wisdom.
To old people on this forum who tried to help me, thank you. Do not masturbate close to video games. May break. This had to be in the manual of the device. Thanks, friends.
That's the story of the Brazilian cum Dreamcast. In 2016, the 31st Summer Olympic Games were held in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Perhaps one of the most storied Olympic events ever. Not so much for the competition, the sportsmanship, or the athleticism, because, who really cares about any of that? It was storied because of what an absolute disaster this event was. An event often referred to as the Apocalyptics. But of all the disasters tied to this event, perhaps the most elusive is one that would often come up on 4chan's paranormal board, X, the Brazilian SpongeBob incident. The supposed Brazilian SpongeBob incident involved a broadcast intrusion that caused several people to poop their pants. So for today's episode of Tales from the Internet, let's take a look at what might be Brazil's equivalent to the Max Headroom incident. Despite allegedly occurring in 2016, the earliest reference I could find to the Brazilian SpongeBob incident was in 2018. A thread on X, Lost Media thread. Top 10 Lost Media, who are they? You have a lot of familiar items pop up in there like the Junko Furuta tapes, or Saki Sanobashi, but there are also quite a few less commonly known ones, including some that I was not familiar with at all. But it's one post in particular that sends a lot of people in the thread for a loop. A bunch of missing 9/11 footage that was seen and not seen before, the confiscated photos and films from Japanese filmmakers during Hiroshima and Nagasaki that are stored in an archive, a lot of Doctor Who episodes, the Brazilian SpongeBob incident that made people poop themselves to the point of needing hospitalization allegedly right before the Olympics. And they were so fascinated by it that another thread about just this was made the next day. And a few different people on both threads seemed somewhat familiar with the tale, although with similar but slightly different tellings. But here's the gist of what allegedly happened. Right before the Olympics broadcast in Brazil began, an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants starts to play. Some say that this was a broadcast error, like the time in 2007 that Comcast accidentally played hardcore porn on the Disney Channel.
How embarrassing!
Others say that this was a deliberate broadcast intrusion along the likes of the Max Headroom incident. And nobody seems to recall what episode exactly it was, although some have brought up Squidward's suicide, which is a supposed lost episode that, was just a part of some bullshit creepypasta. Others claim that it was a bootleg SpongeBob-like show, which was actually something pretty common in Brazil. Brazil being the home of such classics as The Little Panda Fighter, The Little Cars in the Great Race, and of course, who could forget, Ratatouille. But the episode that played isn't actually that important. What's actually important is that during this broadcast, what allegedly played was the brown note, not to be confused with the similarly titled Acacia Strain song. I'm talking about the supposed audio frequency between 5 Hz and 9 Hz that can't be heard, but it can be felt. And when you feel it, it makes you shit your pants. Thus, you have everyone in Brazil at home getting ready to watch the Rio Olympics. All of a sudden, SpongeBob comes on and they all shit their pants. But despite so many people in Brazil shitting their pants at once, almost none of the many Brazilian users of 4chan seem to remember this happening. Why could that be? You were too busy shitting your pants. Others claimed there was a concerted effort by the Brazilian media or government to cover up this story. I'm Brazilian and can confirm. This were all over the news in Rio. I remember seeing news reports with Olympics representatives doing some major damage control. No clips of the episode shown though. But there are a few problems with this story. For starters, pretty much no TV is actually capable of producing this frequency. It's rare that a TV can produce anything lower than even 60 Hz. Now, if you have a home theater system with very expensive audio equipment, you can get a bit lower, but generally not that low. Why would they? It's just not necessary because you can't hear it. Furthermore, even if they could generate this frequency, the consensus seems to be that the brown note is a myth. Throughout the years, many people, such as the Mythbusters, have attempted to make themselves shit their pants with this note. They tried out these low frequencies and failed. For the Mythbusters, there were other effects like feelings of nausea, anxiety, shortness of breath, but no poop. The same goes for experiments conducted by NASA. These ones didn't involve just listening to the frequency, it involved very low frequencies being sent directly to the body with vibrations. These subjects had similar complaints, nausea, anxiety, shortness of breath, but once again, no poop. It's commonly believed that the myth of the brown note originates from a satirical article in the December 1974 issue of New Science. The article describes the creation of an amplification device known as the Colossophone. During the official inauguration of the device, Prince Albert amplifies the national anthem through the horn, causing the entire audience to shit themselves. something that the prince believed to be a protest at the time. Although the article was, as I said, satirical, a lot of people just wound up believing it, and thus you have myth of the brown note entering the popular consciousness. All that being said, I don't think that the idea of the Brazilian SpongeBob incident just simply manifested itself out of nowhere in 2018. Although it's possible that X-Poster just made it up on the spot, I think it's more likely that this rumor was circulating around the time it was claimed to have happened. I had actually forgotten all about this until working on this video, which is pretty funny since I actually made a video on this topic back in the day. Think about the 2016 Olympics. They were such a massive disaster that they would often be called the Apocalyptics, just because of the sheer massive logistical, environmental, and humanitarian disasters that occurred during it. You had things like living quarters with unfinished sinks that are holes that just go down to the lower floors, reporters getting mugged, Olympians' rooms getting robbed, fake recycling bins that empty out into the regular garbage, the Olympic diving pool being closed because the entire building smelled like farts, the airport getting flooded with shit water, hotels getting flooded with shit water, the water for the rowing event being flooded with shit, competitors shitting themselves. I think you get the gist. So with all the legitimate stories of what a disaster these Olympics were, many of the stories involving shit, it stands to reason that a few fake ones, whether it be as a joke or as a troll, materialize and work their way into the public consciousness. So no, the Brazilian SpongeBob incident was most likely not real, but it makes sense why people might have thought it was. Oh, another shit thing happened at the Rio Olympics? Sure, why not? But anyway, that's all for now. Have you ever wanted to poop in someone else's butt? A fecal transplant is a valid medical procedure that is sometimes employed to treat gastrointestinal issues, particularly colitis, which is caused by a bacteria called Clostridium difficile, I don't know. Feces from a healthy donor is taken and implanted into the recipient in a colonoscopy, depositing the healthy feces into the colon, ideally restoring the balance of good bacteria to bad bacteria. But what if you just wanted to put poop in someone else's butt for the fun of it? Well, in 2004, users of the Something Awful forums crowdfunded such a spectacle. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the story of Swap.avi. When Two Girls One Cup burst onto the scene in 2007, there are pretty much two main types of reactions it would get. The first type, of course, being those sorts of reactions that you get in the reaction videos that are all over YouTube.
Oh, she's throwing up! Oh, she's got up!
But then you have a few people who are like, I've seen worse. A great many people who fell into the latter category had already been exposed to something that encompassed everything you saw in Two Girls One Cup and so much more. Swap.avi. 1 hour and 3 minutes of pure fecal depravity. The story of Swap.avi, like many things in this period of time, begins on the Something Awful forums on January 20th of 2004. A user named Metis creates a thread entitled New Fetish, Scat Swapping. Metis begins by saying that he was browsing a website called scatinbrazil.com, and he states this so casually that you can just assume that this was a regular activity for him. But this time, during his Scat in Brazil fun times, he noticed something. They now offer a custom video service. This service allowed you to select your actress or actresses that you wanted, as well as your preferred fetish from their list of options. So essentially, you know, this is basically like Cameo but decades earlier, with more poop. Once you make your selections, you write your script, submit it, and once the producers approve your script, your film is completed 10 days after payment. The only limitations are that there's no hardcore scenes, no armor-piercing objects, no very severe tortures, no menstruation, or any kind of blood. But most importantly, if you had a fetish that didn't involve any of these elements but it wasn't listed, you could just email them directly and see if the directors were down. Metis took this as a challenge to invent a brand new fetish. I had this idea to request a fetish/movie never done in porn or life before. I call it scat swapping. Scat swapping can be summed up quite eloquently in the following custom movie requests I sent to them. I've read the rules for requesting a movie to be made, and it said that if I have a fetish that is different from what is offered, you may be able to talk to the directors and work something out. I got a great idea while watching some scat movies recently. Scat swapping. This would basically be a movie where one woman's ass is penetrated by fingering and tonguing and fisting to make her anus very loose. A third woman will pull her anus open further and hold it open. Meanwhile, the second woman, the scat giver, shits in the first woman's open ass. The woman whose ass has been shit in will then shit the scat giver's shit back out, and everyone will eat it. If possible, I would also like it if the women were able to vomit in the woman's ass along with the shit, or afterwards, so that the vomit could also be shit out and eaten. Please get back to me and let me know if this is something you can accomplish in a video, and if so, how much it will cost. Thank you. I'm loving the mix of cordial, business-like language with detailed descriptions of what he'd like to see done with shit and vomit. At this point though, a lot of people on the forums are convinced that Mendonça is some kind of a troll, or you know, just a guy trying to be funny. But he just keeps reiterating his status as some sort of scat aficionado, mentioning his preference for German and Brazilian scat over Japanese, which he finds disgusting. And he's also not a fan of diarrhea. It's gotta be mushy at most. And he also asserts that poop doesn't taste as bad as you think. It goes on to mention a favorite video in his collection. And funny you mentioned cooked food in scat. I have a large MPEG called pastascat.mpeg, where a dozen women eat pasta, get naked, shit in the pasta, eat the shit and pasta, then shit in each other's mouths, all while vomiting in each other's mouths and attempting to swallow the shit they get in their mouths. It's hubbed, SA Medits, and very popular lately. And a couple days after his initial request, he gets an email from the company. A scat movie with 2 girls costs US $350 plus shipping, and you can pay US $150 for additional girl. This is the price for you make your own video. What do you think about it? Please let me know. Foreboding ellipses. He can't afford all of this on his own though, so he starts setting up a PayPal account to accept donations. But he's not going to accept any until he gets confirmation that this is being made, so he waits on their response. In the meantime, forum goons question why this would get him off, and he goes in detail. Oh, I figured to not answer because when I reply too much in my own thread, people bash me. I like scat because it's demeaning to women in a sexual way. It makes them subordinate to the extreme because eating shit is the worst thing anyone can do besides cannibalism. Honestly, I feel like I rate that worse than cannibalism. Like if I had to choose, especially knowing that the foot taco guy, his situation didn't turn out so bad, I definitely would rather just eat human flesh. Even look back to Greek/Roman writings, the Bible even. There's scat in comical and also dramatic senses. It's always been there. It's one of the most disgusting taboos, and sometimes I like to get off to the depravity of a woman who is willing to swallow someone's shit. On a side note, here are the rest of my fetishes so you may further understand that I am simply deviant and enjoy so-called disgusting things, because I feel that they are not disgusting but beautiful. 1. Heavy or light facial acne. 2. Big noses. 3. Protruding chins. 3. Stretch marks/chubby chicks. 4. Female bellies. 5. Ugly girls. So you see, I don't believe there is one paradigm by which women and sexual interests must be judged, because I can also like what everyone else likes at times, but I believe those who harshly judge the interests of others are close-minded. And still, even with all the highly detailed posts, many of which it almost seems like Mendonça got off a little writing them, a lot of goons weren't fully convinced of his commitment to scat. So they request that he verify this by taking a picture of himself with shit smeared on his chest, spelling the words comedy gold. And believe it or not, he did it. This had more or less fully sold the forum on the man's authenticity. And as this happens, he receives another response from the production company. For them to be sure that they can do this, he needs to send a more detailed script. He comes up with a set where there's 3 girls in a classroom. The students get excited by the teacher's ass, and then the teacher drops the chalk, bends over, and they just can't control themselves anymore. They start stripping and playing with themselves. And then the students finger and eat the teacher's ass to open it up a little bit. One girl shits into the teacher's ass, the shit gets double shitted into a mouth, yada yada yada, you get the gist. And he does have some final caveats. Emphasis, after the shit is expelled, should always be on swallowing and sharing the scat with each other. The girls should always open their mouths to show what they're chewing and swallowing. And if anyone vomits, it should be into the mouth or ass of another girl. He also requested all the girls call each other mommy. As things are moving along, he asked the forum if people would be willing to donate, and several are on board. He quickly gets a reply from the company who responded that reading the script made the girls very horny. Which I guess, good for them. I mean, what more can you ask than having a job you love? In any case, now it's time to start raising that $500. As an incentive, Mendonça offers up some of his personal belongings in exchange for donations. These belongings include PlayStation 2, Silent Hill 2 and 3, and before you say anything, Silent Hill 4 wasn't out yet. Tool albums, because of course the shit swap guy was into Tool. Also KMFDM albums, and movies on DVD including Fight Club, Existenz, The Matrix, and many, many more. And also, the donors would have their names in the credits, because, you know, it's basically what a producer is. He also notes that it's $150 for an extra girl, so if they reach 500 fast enough, they could potentially raise $650 and get a 4th girl. And in a matter of days, that $650 stretch goal is reached. And just before the final payment comes up, Forum Goon Yuke comes up with the idea to insert some Something Awful references into the video, since the classroom putting it on the chalkboard would make sense. The payment is made, the prizes are sent, and now the waiting game begins. Should just be 10 days. But of course, people are impatient, and even within that 10-day period, people are coming into the post and being like, hey, where's that poop swap movie I paid good money for? But he assures people that it's coming. 7 days into the wait, the original thread gets locked and Menace makes a new thread. Then the 10th day passes though, and still no movie. But are they counting weekends? Do they have weekends off? We don't know. Did they mean 10 days from when they receive the payment, or when they start production? Or as user Conzilla suggested, maybe in Brazil, 10 days is actually 20 days. In the meantime, word of these shenanigans are spreading to other forums, including the Suicide Girls forums, where someone points out that this actually isn't a new fetish. In fact, there's already a name for it. The Manhattan Transfer, which, you know, as a lifelong New Yorker, fills me with a sense of pride. Well, then more time passes, and we're well past the 20 days estimate of Brazilian time conversion. It's now March. The forum users are becoming increasingly convinced that either Menace got scammed or he himself is a scammer, which I guess in a way would kind of be the perfect crime. If you get your money stolen trying to produce Brazilian scat porn, you're probably not going to tell that many people you got scammed. Ultimately, Menace gets permabanned from the forums. A combination of not delivering on this video, the moderators simply finding him annoying, and also trying to dox the moderator who closed his original thread. So everyone just figures it's a thing that's not going to happen and everyone kind of moves on. That is, until March 31st. A user named Cannibal who knows Menace claims that he was sent 20 preview pics of the video, and it's almost done. Most are shocked that this thing actually turned out to be real, but a few people still aren't quite convinced it's legit. This could be another scat video they're just saying is his video, but there's a little detail that seals its authenticity. The chalkboard, full of Something Awful references. This maniac actually did it. But still, months pass, and it isn't until June 26th that a user named The Onion shows up, poop video in hand, as a torrent file. And it's basically just as Menace envisioned it. The film opens with saucy 80s guitar music, and DeVry Institute level CG animation of a farm with birds flying over it for some reason. Then the title hits, Scat Swapping School Swallow. The credits roll, and it should be noted the editor Marco Villanova is in fact the director of 2 Girls, 1 Cup. And in fact, it's been a point of contention whether or not one of the girls in the video is in 2 Girls, 1 Cup. But I can 100% confirm that she is. So what I did is, I sat there and looked for parts where their tattoos were visible, and sure enough, the one girl's neck tattoo matches up with 2 Girls, 1 Cup. So she is in fact in both videos. They're in the classroom, and we're told this is a classroom by the Mickey Mouse and bananas in pajamas toys strewn about. Got colorful numbers stuck to the wall, and a chalkboard too small for the students to ever actually learn anything, as the teacher writes something awful catchphrases like, "But did you get head?" Then the teacher drops the chalk, which naturally leads to an ass-eating frenzy, and then poop in the butt. From that point, for an hour, shit and puke go into every possible hole that shit and puke could possibly go into, and the whole thing leads to a big shit-covered giggle fest. There's honestly not too much for me to summarize about this, because as you might be surprised, it's a little thin on plot. But if you really want to find it and see for yourself, it can be found. Something that should be noted though, even though he was promised poop in the butt, it's more like the poop goes on the butt and then they shove it in by hand, which some users questioned the technicality of that Manhattan transfer. Does it count? So The Onion responded, yeah, called for shitting in each other's asses, but these girls had that kind of runny shit, so they couldn't really do a clean transfer like he wanted, so cramming it in each other's asses was pretty much all they could do. Menace didn't display any sort of disappointment to me. He seemed to think this video was really funny, but in actuality, I think he can't stop jerking off to it. So there you go, Swap.avi had a happy ending after all. Although I have to say, I did see a lot of posts about people burning this movie and leaving them in unsuspecting places, under all kinds of misleading decoy names. You have to wonder if there's people out there who just happen to stumble upon this that way, and until this very moment had gone their entire lives wondering about what it was they had actually found. Today, I have another lost media case for you. This one caught my attention not just because it's a good song, but also because it takes us back to a website that was key in popularizing the most mysterious song on the internet, that being spiritofradio.ca. This one was posted by Peter in August of 2014, and we have this 30-second clip. This song's got a very freestyle kind of vibe, and I love freestyle. My playlists are full of it, and if you hand me the aux chord during a party, I'm very likely to put on Cover Girls or something like that. So you know I gotta find out who made this song so I can find the rest of their music. So for this episode of Tales from the Internet, let's take a look at what we know about this song so far. Today we're talking about an unidentified song that's been tentatively labeled Fond My Mind, based on what one of the lines in the song sounds like. Although the song's been floating around for quite some time, the search for it has gained some steam the past few months. The earliest post on Reddit that I saw about it was created by No Seacrest on r/LostWave back in December of 2019. 80s/90s song, Nowhere to Run. Red Sector 1? This post links to the 2014 Spirit of Radio post, and this one calls it Nowhere to Run based on the first line that's said in this clip. The lead of this song potentially being by the band Red Sector 1 comes from a comment posted by Corey on this Spirit of Radio post. So, Red Sector 1 was a Canadian band that formed in 1991, and was active up until 1999. Let's compare their music to this clip of the song Fond My Mind. Assuming that this was recorded in the early 90s, I think their first album World Peace from 1992 is the way to go. So, this band, Red Sector 1, to me sounds awesome, but at the same time, I really don't hear the comparison at all. As I said at the beginning, the freestyle vibe to me is very apparent in the clip, and when I listen to Red Sector 1, I'm hearing almost kind of a more industrial vibe. Just overall completely incompatible with the clip that we're looking for. And if we go later in their catalog,
We can hide and seek every day of the week. Oh, you can see these stars with me.
it gets more upbeat, but still a different sort of vibe from what we're looking for. In his post, No Seacrest noted that he was attempting to contact the band through their Facebook page. And ultimately, in the Discord for the most mysterious song on the internet, he would comment that he did manage to contact them through their SoundCloud. He spoke to a member of the band, Mike Davis, and Mike Davis confirmed that this is in fact not their song. Mike would also indicate that his current projects are Nasty Little Green Man and Surrounded by Spiders, in case you want to check those out. A redditor named GameMonkeyDev made a few threads looking for the song, which would yield some suggestions like Annie Lennox, New Order, Depeche Mode, which once again don't really have the right vibe to me. And of course they're so popular that there's no way that this would just be unidentified if it was one of their songs. It's the same problem that comes up with the most mysterious song on the internet a lot. I think a lot of people aren't particularly familiar with all the different subgenres of old music, so they just kind of want to put it all under this old music umbrella, just the genre of old. But at this point, there really wasn't much to go off of other than people just shooting suggestions into the dark. However, a lot more clues were found when it was realized that Peter, who had posted the song Spirit of Radio, was not the first person to post this online. In fact, someone else had uploaded the song to What Zat Song, a website dedicated to identifying music, a year earlier in 2013. This user's name was GSipKoi. Other accounts with the same name would be found, including a Last.fm account that had scrabbled similar music, implying that it was likely the same guy. And as Jay, a user who had popularized the search for this particular song, noted in the Mysterious Song Discord, since What's a Song has a clip cutoff of 30 seconds, and the Spirit of Radio clip was also 30 seconds, at this point we only had 30 seconds of the song, and the clip cutoff for What's That Song is 30 seconds. Meaning that Jisub Koi most likely had only cut it to 30 seconds to reach the time limit and had the entire song. A few attempts to contact Jisub Koi were made through the various accounts with no response, but eventually he would respond to Glups. Hi, I got a reply from Gabber, Jisub Koi. Thanks for your message. Yes, I'm the same person who posted that song on What's That Song many years ago. I'm happy to know that there are other people interested in it, but unfortunately, I still have no further information about this song, frowny face. I recorded the song somewhere around 1991 or 1992 on a cassette tape. About 10 years ago, I converted all my old cassette tapes to MP3, and that's when I decided to try to identify this song, but I had not succeeded yet. Frowny face. Best regards, Gabber. Gabber would eventually join the Discord and share some more information. Oh, and he would also share the entire 3-minute and 12-second recording. I'm not going to play the whole song for you, but here are some of the key moments that we hadn't heard previously. Now, I'm not the only person to have made this observation, but for some reason, this intro to me it sounds strangely Indian. Like the vocals do not sound Indian to me at all, but there's just something about this that gives me like a Benny Lava kind of vibe. And this right here, I feel like I've heard a variation of this solo in so many different freestyle songs. Anyway, if you want to listen to the full track, it's uploaded to JK's YouTube channel, along with a lot of other unidentified tracks. Gabber noted that the recording was made from a radio station in Brazil named Transamerica, and like the most mysterious song on the internet, this too was part of a mixtape that he had made. When he looked back at the tape, he had noticed that the earliest song on it was Duran Duran's Ordinary World, which was released in December of 1992. This means that contrary to what he had thought at first, this tape was most likely recorded in 1993. He also noted that this song was played on the radio a number of times. He even showed it to family members from Brazil who also remembered hearing this on the radio. And I had also noticed other Brazilians on Reddit saying that they had heard this song on the radio. But that being said, despite this band being played on the radio in Brazil, it's very likely that the band themselves are not from Brazil. He noted that this song was unlike a lot of the music he had heard from Brazil at the time, and this particular radio station was known for playing American and European hits. And several people also noted that the singer of this song doesn't sound like a native English speaker. A lot of people are convinced that the singer is either Italian or French. And to that point, Alan SM, a Brazilian user of the Discord server, gave some context for music in Brazil at the time. I'm Brazilian, so to give a bit of perspective from what I remember from the time I was a kid then, Eurodance was very popular at the time. In southern Brazil where I live, pretty much all the kids I knew listened to it. The artists being played on the radio were mostly Italian or German, but there were a few local artists as well. Freestyle was a big thing in Rio, they called it funk, but it wasn't popular here. If this song was made by a local artist, it would be natural to combine elements of freestyle and Eurodance. Another thing which might be helpful, at the time, it was very common for smaller record companies to release compilations of Eurodance songs, comprised of a few popular songs and many unknowns. They would partner with popular radio stations and name the compilations after them. For example, something like the hottest songs from Radio Whatever. It could be that this song was on a compilation like that. He had also noted that Italian music in particular was very popular with Brazilian DJs at the time. To which user Silberizing added that Italians at the time were churning out such a sheer mass of dance music that the odds are good that this could be a lost Italo track. Meanwhile, Gabber did actually manage to contact Transamerica. None of the DJs who would have been around then were still working for them, but they did direct him to a list of popular songs from each year. This song, however, was not among any of the lists. And in the comments of JK's YouTube upload, another potential lead was raised. This one from a commenter named Randolph who had mentioned he had heard the song too, but on Danish radio. So I might be completely wrong and confusing this for another song, of course, but I'm pretty sure this song used to play on the Danish radio station The Voice in the mid-90s, and that a sample of it was used in like one of those radio advertising stingers way into the aughts. The Voice had some kind of connection to Bulgaria and later opened a radio station there. A user named Maximus Vergara found an uploaded broadcast from The Voice, and it definitely sounds like a station that would have played this sort of music. Unfortunately, this particular track was not in the uploaded broadcast. So right now we got a bunch of clues, but no real solid leads. Some artists and compilations have been looked into, but nothing's really turned up anything. My hope with this video is that, like a lot of the recent lost media cases that have been solved by viewers of the channel, that it just reaches a large enough audience that someone happens to just know it. And I've noticed that looking at the demographic information for my channel, one of the top countries that watches me is actually Brazil. So there actually is a pretty good chance that one of you watching has actually heard this song on the radio before too, and maybe you even know what it's called. If you do know what it's called, of course, leave a comment, send me a message somewhere, let me know what it is. But for now, that's all for the most mysterious song in Brazil. I think that's what I'm going to title this one. I'm sure someone's going to tell me there's other more mysterious songs in Brazil, but you know, we got to keep some kind of consistency here. The end of 2023 was an exciting time for Lost Media. A lot of stuff got found, including two of the songs that I've covered on this channel in the past. Those being the Filthy Frank Kenya song, and the most mysterious song in Brazil, aka Fond My Mind. And in both cases, I think the stories behind how they were found were just as interesting as the discoveries themselves. The way the Filthy Frank song was found will completely change your perspective on Lost Media searches. As for the Brazilian song, that might be the most drama-filled search for any piece of Lost Media that I've ever seen, to the point where the community itself almost becomes a bigger story than the song. So for today's video, let's take a look at both of these recent discoveries. Let's begin with the Filthy Frank song. I originally covered this song in December of 2020, but let's have a quick refresher. In 2013, the song was featured in a Filthy Frank video called How to Pick Up Girls in 30 Different Cultures. In the part about Kenya, there's a song in the background. Nobody had been able to identify it, and even Frank himself said he had no idea what it was. Then on December 2nd of this past year, a YouTuber named NB Duckman covers the story. His video clocks in at over 15 minutes and goes a bit further in depth than mine did, including confirming some of the evidence that was just rumors in the past, and also finding some brand new leads. He also put up a $300 reward of his own money for finding the song. At the time, NB Duckman had just under 5,000 subscribers, and the video itself only had 856 views. But incredibly, it was one of those 856 people that found the song, settling this decade-long mystery in just under 7 hours. The viewer, a New Zealander named Damn Peggy, explained how he found it. On YouTube, he searched Ugandan Gospel before 2013. He found a song called Yesu Mimi Nakupenda Sana by Samuel Olowo. This wasn't the song, but it sounded similar. He noticed that in the description it said East Ugandan, so he tried searching East Ugandan Gospel before 2013. And there it was. Second result, uploaded 12 years ago. Katanda Alinawe by David Sunjay C. Throughout the search, you have people doing things like trying to contact Ugandan pastors and find obscure record stores, and there it was the whole time, just a YouTube search away. NB Duckman goes into more detail about the song's discovery in his video about it. So I highly recommend watching his as well as subscribing to his channel because he has way too few subscribers for the quality of his work. And I really like that this mystery was solved this way because it puts a lot of things into perspective. You know, you've had people all over the internet that were hyper-focused on this search for like a decade. My video about it has about 350,000 views, and over the years I've had people message me with various leads that kind of went nowhere. And then 856 people watched this guy's video and it's solved in 7 hours. All because one of those people searched slightly differently from how people did in the past. So if you ever thought, oh, I'd like to cover this story, but there's no point because Wang did it already, clearly you shouldn't be thinking that way. Now let's go to Brazil, Fond My Mind. I covered this song back in July of 2021. The song was recorded off of Transamerica Radio in Brazil at some point in the early 90s, and was referred to as Find My Mind or Nowhere to Run because of lyrics in the song that people could make out. After my video came out, I hadn't heard that many promising leads on it. The main thing I heard about it only happened this past summer, and it was when a copyright troll was trying to claim the song, much like what happened with the original Mysterious song. If you watched my video about the song, you'll recall that JK ran a channel hosting a number of lost songs, including Find My Mind. The channel became a target of this copyright troll because, you know, it's a lot easier to pretend you own a lost song than one that someone else clearly owns. Ultimately, YouTube took the channel down, ignoring the evidence that this person did not own the song. Honestly, on top of being a dick move, it's just stupid. Instead of raking in free money from false claims, they issue strikes, killing the channel. It's like a parasite that kills its host and dies itself as a result. But I've noticed that throughout the years of covering lost media, there's just something about this topic that attracts people who really don't want anything other than to ruin the search. And even one person can do a lot of damage. In terms of actual promising leads though, I hadn't heard anything until this past September. People started to message me about the song and its creator possibly being discovered. And I would also receive messages from people saying that this whole thing is a hoax. So here's what happens. On September 24th, a user named Skirty arrives, noting that the search seems relatively inactive. He also says that although a lot of the search has led people to look into European or Japanese artists, he's convinced it's a Brazilian that made it. And as a Brazilian himself, he's going to reach out to local radio stations and broadcasters and try and find any leads. And a bit later, he has something that he thinks is promising. So there is a theory that Fond My Mind was based on a sample of an Italo disco song called Each Time I Touch You by Valentino. And if you listen to the intro to that song, you can definitely hear it. Now, Valentino was previously a really big lead for this case. It ultimately went nowhere, but it was one of those leads that kept on coming back. So every time a new person came around and said, hey, how about Valentino? Everyone that had been around for a while was like, ugh. It became such a meme that Robotical Halloween in the Discord server created a message from Valentino.
I did not sing Find My Mind, you fucking idiot.
So here comes Skirty bringing back Valentino, but he's not saying that Valentino did it. He's saying a Brazilian sampled Valentino's song, and according to Skirty, he said this was very common throughout the 90s up until around 2006, where Brazilian cover bands would take an Italo disco song or a Eurodance song like this and remix it. So he figured that this was another one like that that just didn't take off. He would later notice a comment on a fan-made interpretation of a Radio Cidade broadcast playing Fond My Mind. The comment mentioned that there's an old cover band in Recife called Maquinas na Pista, and if it's made by someone there, they probably know who. Skirty found the band, who were actually still active, and shot them a message about it. And surprisingly, in a few days, they actually responded. The member he spoke to told them that the song's not theirs, but they know who made it. They said the song had been made by two men from Recife, produced by Eddie Valcan, with vocals by Sergio Dourado. They said this with complete certainty and even linked to their profiles. And although this was a huge lead, there was some skepticism, which, with the amount of trolling that goes on in lost media, it's understandable. But Skirty took a bit of offense at the skepticism, asking if people didn't think it was possible for a Brazilian to have made this song, or if they're just not taking him seriously because he's new to the search. In any case, everyone seems to be in agreement that this is a lead that shouldn't be ignored. Skirty found samples of Sergio and Eddie's work, including a Pet Shop Boys remix produced by Eddie. The next day, another Brazilian Redditor named Chrono Zedu would get in touch with Eddie. Eddie confirmed that this was his song. He said the actual name of it was Feels Like a Wish. He also sent the lyrics, and it's important to note that the lyrics he sent include words that appear before the clip we've all heard. That means that if he's telling the truth, there's a completely lost segment of the song that nobody's heard before. So providing that segment would be absolute proof that he is the real deal. Meanwhile, Skirty had been talking to Sergio, who provided much of the same information. But Sergio also said that he's not actually the vocalist. He said it was actually a man named Andre who sung on that song. He concludes by talking about the conversation with Eddie. Eddie was very happy and surprised to see such a commotion in search of the authors of a sound he made years ago, which was a very personal work about platonic love, and also sharing a little more of his portfolio with Kronos. He showed to Eddie about Wang's video, and he had no idea about the size and proportion of his work nowadays. I will share some screenshots about this conversation soon as we get more information and concrete proofs. But here is my first conversation with Kronos, also some screenshots about his first conversation with Eddie. So this is everything we have now. I'm not the best doing this, and as I said on Discord, I'm just another Brazilian believing on the potential of my country to make some bangers. Meanwhile in the Discord, Eduardo Rodriguez, who I believe is Kronos from Reddit, had gotten word from Eddie that he's looking through hard drives and will send over the audio. Skirty says in Discord, "Looks like me and Eduardo Rodriguez solved the mystery. Just waiting for the recorded song and real proofs, but I have no doubt." Although there's a lot of excitement about this, people aren't quite ready to declare it solved yet. Because, you know, how many times has a person claimed to be behind a song and then it turned out they're full of shit? But, you know, Skirty is taking people's skepticism as an affront to his country. I'll come back later. This guys really don't want to believe that this song was created here, lol. Yeah, I'm probably a troll, just trolling everyone, come on. So, one of the main reasons that a lot of people were ruling out Brazil was that the synths identified in the song wouldn't have been available there at the time. Skirty interprets this as people saying Brazil is a poor country, which he takes offense to. But as it turned out, there actually was an explanation for this. According to his conversation with Eduardo, Eddie was living in New York when he made the song. In fact, on top of the synths used, that makes even more sense because New York at the time was the center of the freestyle movement. So if you're a producer of electronic music living in New York City at that time, there's no escaping the kind of vibe that you hear in this song. In any case, a few users explained to Skirty why everyone is so skeptical here and not quite ready to declare the mystery solved, and he understands. Another user named Minish had also been speaking to Eddie. As a freestyle and Italo dance producer herself, she was picking his brain about the gear he used. And the gear list he sent her lined up with what could have been used to make the song. But then he said something that threw a lot of people off. Now instead of just posting the song, he wanted to make a remaster, which he would post along with some new music. A few people were worried that this meant he was going to rebuild the song from scratch and try to fake ownership, but that's generally not what a remaster is. You're just adjusting levels and whatnot to try and make it sound better. It's totally understandable that a guy who made this song decades ago would want to approach it differently now, especially when he has so much attention and in his mind he wants to put his best work forward. And as Ultra J and Rain pointed out in the Discord, this isn't unusual and there's other examples of artists of found lost media songs doing remasters. That being said, there was a sentiment that I saw a lot that I agree with. It's that attempts to remaster older songs often make them worse. Remastered songs often wind up feeling sterile and overproduced. It's also a process that could take some time, maybe a month or more, and he didn't seem willing to upload the original version. And then he'd later tell Minish that he was looking for a label to distribute the music, which is an even longer process. While this is all going on, people are trying to verify the song by looking up registration info. He provides a user named Pencil D with information about the song. I produced that song in 1989 and registered in 1991. My project was named Station K. The name of the song is Feels Like a Wish. I created it when I was in New York City, and the lead vocals by Andrew N. He then also mentions the remaster to Pencil. Pencil responds by asking if he can hear some of the unfinished version. Here's how Eddie responds. "Dude, I'm busy and don't have time for that. But I'm the creator. Don't you believe me?" Now, the server had a rule about not contacting leads without permission, so you don't scare them off. But apparently, it was actually Eddie who initiated the conversation with him after he added him on Instagram. This exchange now starts to turn a lot of people against Eddie. Why is he being so defensive all of a sudden? And people can't seem to find this information on any known database. Now at this point, I was completely unaware of any of this ongoing drama, but I had heard that this was potentially solved, so I did an extremely rare thing and I popped onto Discord to ask about it. I was on the fence about making an update video at that point because I knew that we still hadn't gotten the remaster, and I didn't want to put the video out and then everybody starts bothering that guy and we just never get anything. And in fact, at that time, they'd actually been trying to crack down on people hitting him up after a few recent incidents, including a guy posing as an Italian DJ to try and trick him. So I decided to hold off on making my video. But then nearly a month passes and he's still telling people, oh, it's coming soon. He's working on the album to release with it, but it's almost here. You have this thing going on where you have some people ready to declare the whole thing a hoax, where you have other people ready to declare it solved. It's getting labeled as Eddie's song on What's That Song and Genius. So it's decided that Jay will message Eddie one more time. "Hi Eddie, I'm the person who popularized the search for the song, which you claim is called Feels Like a Wish and created by you. Over the last month, a couple people have been in contact with you about the song, but I'm not sure what's going on with them now. So I decided to message you myself. I hope that's okay. I know you mentioned remastering the song before releasing it, but I'm wondering if you could first just provide the original recording for us. I'm also wondering if you can tell me more information about the song, such as who exactly the Andre that sings on it is. I look forward to hearing back from you. Thank you. Eddie responds by reiterating a lot of the information he's already given people, such as the dates and the song being made in New York, and that he's working on getting radio distribution. So Jay sends a follow-up asking for more info about Andre, such as his last name. Also, if he could upload the unremastered version as proof. Here's what happens. I have more to do than prove this song is mine to everyone. There have been plenty of people for both this song and others with unknown authorship who have claimed the song for themselves, but have done little to nothing to prove it. So forgive us if we're skeptical. This message sends Eddie over the edge, prompting a response that's up there with the E-Bombs World Yiddish Cup email. My nobleman, and why should I have to prove anything to you or anyone else in the world? You're so pathetic. I don't need to prove anything to anyone. The song is mine and fuck it. I don't give a shit if you believe it or not. I have a lot, much more to do with my life than talking to strangers of dubious character, or proving something to someone else. Fuck off your impetulance. Do you really think I'm a fool? Do you really think you're fooling me and think I don't know you're a criminal? You have a fake profile, evasive and lacking in information, and you are there trying to scam people, or trying to illegally appropriate the works of others. So listen well. And just remembering that if you or anyone else in the world make an unauthorized use of my song, I'll file a lawsuit up your ass. At this point, almost everyone who sees this message thinks he's a troll now. I started getting a lot of messages saying he's definitely a hoaxer. And also, calling people noblemen becomes the greatest meme I've seen in all of Lost Media. Apparently, as PM Me Awesome Songs pointed out, it's a Brazilian slang to call someone nobre, noble, like you'd call someone my friend as an opening. He just used nobleman instead. That being said though, a lot of people, including people who spoke to him in the past, just said he's probably getting annoyed from getting so many messages all of a sudden. And also looking at it, he probably legitimately thought this was some kind of scam. Furthermore, even if he is a bit of a hothead, that doesn't necessarily mean he's lying. And it is the most complete lead the search has pretty much ever seen. In any case though, it's clear that either he's gonna post it or he's not gonna post it, so there's no need to belabor it. The search has to go on. A Discord user named Opals wound up finding a dentist in Recife named Andre Nobrega on Facebook. Then a Brazilian user of the server, Sam K, who runs a YouTube channel about Lost Media called GK's Vivo, messaged him in Portuguese, with the idea being it's probably better off moving forward that only Brazilians contact these people. Andre would confirm that he was the singer and Eddie was the composer, but he says that he doesn't have anything that can prove it, so he should contact Eddie about it. Womp womp. But there was another potential person to contact. In a 1998 Brazilian TV report about electronic music in Recife, Eddie was interviewed. But there was another man there, William Paiva. We need to find this guy. This is our Alvin Dean. And William actually turned up pretty quickly. Sam would find him on Instagram and send him a message. And 3 days later, William reported that he has a copy of the original tape that went to radio at the time. But he stated that the song is from Eddie. William stated that he will look for the tape tomorrow in the studio, but does not know the state. And he stated that the version that we possibly know is cut at the beginning. The next day, Sam would receive another message from William. William had found the tape, and he sent Sam this clip. People still weren't fully convinced though, because it didn't show the missing intro. Just the part that's already been heard, so there could be some kind of trickery going on here. But then, William joins the Discord himself, and as he's digitizing the song, he posts this. This was the lost intro, the thing that I said at the beginning of the video would prove its legitimacy. And then on December 14th, William would post this to YouTube.
I don't know what makes me dream, but I know what makes me think. You got blue eyes like the sky.
That was it. Find My Mind had been found, which also means that, much to the chagrin of a lot of people involved in this search, it was Eddie all along. William clarified too that he had no actual involvement in the creation of this song. He was just acquainted with Eddie by being involved in the same local scene. Eddie comments, "Finally, the truth came out. A slap in the face to everyone who doubted me. Thanks, William Paiva, you rock." And on December 20th, Eddie would finally post his version of the song. And in the comments of William's video, Eddie mentions that he's currently working with a filmmaker to make a documentary about the song and its discovery, to give us the perspective of a guy who learned that his 30-year-old song is suddenly the center of an internet mystery. And thus, the case of Find My Mind has been solved. But the drama still persists as Skirty does his victory lap, and the rest of the server fights with him. You know, it's always been really funny to me how, of all the topics I cover on this channel, Lost Media is by far the most G-rated, inoffensive stuff. It consistently creates the most drama-filled communities around it. This has got to be like some kind of psychological thing that should be studied. Pornography is something that has historically always been enjoyed in private, away from the judging eyes of friends, family, and the general public. For the most part. And the more depraved it gets, the further we retreat into the shadows, hoping to hide our shame from the light of day. I can think of at least one glowing exception to this behavior, though. An exception in which, rather than keeping it secret, millions of people opted to share it with those closest to them, and sometimes, millions of complete strangers on the internet. This is the story of the time a filthy porn clip got turned into a communal experience for people around the world. This is the story of 2 girls, 1 cup. It goes without saying that YouTube is almost definitely going to demonetize this video, but thankfully, this video is sponsored by NordVPN. If you're the type of person who's for some reason invested in finding out the rich backstories of porn clips, NordVPN can make sure there's absolutely no record of your viewing habits. And if you're traveling this time of year, as people tend to do, NordVPN's encryption can make sure that your data is protected while you're connected to any kind of shady public Wi-Fi. Just go to nordvpn.com/wang for 75% off a 3-year deal and use code WANG for an extra month. The other day I saw a bunch of people tweeting about a vegan milkshake made out of hummus, and it suddenly reminded me of perhaps the most infamous viral shock video of all time. Of course, I'm talking about 2 Girls, 1 Cup. Obviously, I can't actually show this one to you here, but in case you somehow missed it, 2 Girls, 1 Cup was a montage of 2 girls dramatically eating poop out of a cup. And after they ate it, they took turns puking it into each other's mouths, alternating roles as Mama Bird and Baby Bird. And all this goes on as a classy piano theme from a 1971 French film plays. But where did this thing come from? The 2 Girls, 1 Cup story begins when this video clip was posted to the offtopic.com forums in the After Hours section. The video quickly gained a lot of attention on these forums, as it seemed to do wherever it was posted. Wanting a way to quickly share the video with friends, a user named Cajones purchased the URL 2girls1cup.com. And he created the now infamous website on August 12, 2007, and he quickly forgot about it until his hosting service came knocking on his door looking for money. During the first month of the site being up, I had encountered some issues. At that time, I had no care for the site and had even forgotten that the site existed, until one day where it was brought to my attention that I owed some money to the hosting company due to bandwidth overages. At that time, I thought it was some sort of mistake, either that or the company was trying to get some money out of me. It was all confirmed that I did indeed exceed bandwidth usages, and I directed myself to my analytics account. And if we look at the analytics screenshot that Cajones posted, it was on August 20th that the site really began to take off. It was at that point that 2 Girls, 1 Cup had begun to make its way far outside the original intended audience of offtopic.com users, and became a viral shock site in the great tradition of goatc.cx, meatspin.com, or lemonparty.org. But unlike a lot of the shock sites that came before it, 2girls.com evolved into something that people weren't looking at by accident, but on purpose. And it was the trend of people reacting to 2 Girls, 1 Cup that really propelled it to the heights that it reached. The first such video was believed to have been uploaded to YouTube on September 21st, 2007 by a user named Fartnewt. As of the time of this recording, Fartnewt's video now has over 14 million views. And Fartnewt's success inspired a whole wave of people to start putting their reactions out there. Practically overnight, YouTube became flooded with people sharing their reactions to 2 Girls, 1 Cup, and their family members' reactions too. And although reaction videos had existed to some extent previously, what we are witnessing here was the true genesis of the personality-driven reaction format that would wind up taking over YouTube for years. It's kind of fitting that the reaction video genre was basically spawned by literal shit. And on October 11th, the site's traffic literally doubled overnight, going from 100,000 views to 200,000 views. And those numbers would more than double the next month. At this point, Cojones had hired a tech-savvy friend to help deal with the maintenance of the site, and additionally, he began to monetize it with ads. But the money wasn't really what excited Cojones, rather, it was the thrill of being the man behind the shit-stained curtain. At this point, everything was Rick Ross, boss, and we felt on top of the world. Not because we were making some money off the site, but more so because of all the attraction the site had received. I felt like an undercover superstar. I would walk around Chicago and listen to people talk about 2 Girls, 1 Cup, and I would always giggle inside knowing that it was me who created the site. It was kind of a cool feeling, but at the same time I felt awkward for exposing something so disgusting. The fad had gone from something that was intended really just for the consumption of a specific message board to a full-blown mainstream sensation. It was at this point that celebrities started to weigh in. You had John Mayer making his parody of it. And although he was eating yogurt in it as a spoof, there were a lot of people who questioned the authenticity of the shit in the video. A lot of people thought that perhaps they had done some kind of movie magic, like what they did with Marmalade and Salo. There was a lot of debate over this, and fittingly, it was summarized really well by perhaps the only other figure in porn as mainstream as 2 Girls, 1 Cup, Ron Jeremy.
They probably substituted it for pistachio ice cream.
No, I believe that's the real deal.
No, I don't think it is.
You don't think it is? All right, keep watching.
They might have substituted.
Keep watching.
How could they go that much? Girls like that don't go that much.
What, do you think they're men?
You've had girlfriends this
You
small.
saw it go to their butt? You think they're men?
Girls have little balls when they go to the bathroom.
And this debate was actually more important than people realized. In fact, the US government was quite concerned with the provenance of the shit featured in 2 Girls, 1 Cup. In 2005, under the Bush administration, the Department of Justice created a new organization known as the Obscenity Prosecution Task Force. Their job was to prosecute people involved in the production and distribution of porn that they believed to be in violation of obscenity laws. And one of the men who was prosecuted by this organization was a pornographer and self-described shock artist named Ira Isaacs. When Isaacs was prosecuted, there was a lot of confusion created by news sites that falsely reported that he was the creator of 2 Girls, 1 Cup. He was actually prosecuted for a number of different scat films, but the confusion was created when he used 2 Girls, 1 Cup to justify his defense of Hollywood Scat Amateurs 10. His arguments would become popularly dubbed the 2 Girls, 1 Cup defense. Until I saw 2 Girls, 1 Cup, I wouldn't have thought so many regular people would want to watch this stuff. There are millions of people watching it. For now, it's probably most people like the shock value of it. This is art that asks questions about what's ugly, acceptable, taboo. It takes something mundane, like going to the bathroom, and puts it in a new light. It inspires people. Just because it has sex in it, and deals with a subject matter that isn't typically in art, doesn't mean it isn't art. Getting the court to decide that Isaac's films were in fact art was key to fighting off the obscenity case. But unfortunately for Ira Isaacs, the court didn't see things his way. After several years of mistrials and delays, it was found that Ira Isaacs was guilty of obscenity. And because of this, Ira Isaacs was sentenced to 4 years in prison. And due to the shabby reporting of a number of websites and the fact that few people actually saw their corrections, this led to a rumor that the creator of 2 Girls, 1 Cup was actually in jail for making it. In fact, the creator of 2 Girls, 1 Cup is very much free and has never been jailed for his work. 2 Girls, 1 Cup was actually the trailer to a larger film entitled Hungry Bitches. This film was created in Brazil by a director named Marco Antonio Fiorito, and although the film was perfectly legal to distribute inside of Brazil, when it made it to the US, it got on the radar of Bush's task force. And it was on September 5th of 2006 when a criminal complaint was raised against a Brazilian man in Florida named Danilo Simões Crozes. The complaint details a several-year investigation beginning in 2003 into two film distribution companies, Dragon Films and Lexus Media. It describes in detail a film entitled Toilet Man 6, as well as a number of other films all created by Marco Antonio Fiorito. To help the judge along, it also goes on to define terms like scat, bukkake, and fisting. And the complaint ends with a statement implicating Danilo. As noted above, Crochet is identified as the officer, director, treasurer, president for Lexus Multimedia on filings that were submitted to the Florida Secretary of State. In addition, Crochet opened and controlled the bank accounts of Lexus Multimedia and received portions of the proceeds that were made from the sale of videos and downloads by Lexus Multimedia, among other things. And at the request of Danilo's attorney, Marco Antonio Fiorito issued a statement. This statement is the only publicly known record of Fiorito addressing his work. He begins it by discussing his own history. In 1994, I became interested in producing films, and on my own, I learned the art of filmmaking. In 1996, I started a business with my wife, Yoelma Brito Fiorito, who used the artistic name Leticia Miller. The business was producing fetish films. At that time, my wife and I did everything. We were the actors, the producers, as well as the filming. Sometimes we hired other people to operate the camera. We made these films to sell. When we started, the only films that we made were about feet fetishes. I placed ads in the local newspapers offering fetish films. The people that were interested called a phone number in the ad, and I told them about the available fetish films. The buyers would place an order, and I would personally deliver the videos to their homes, where I would collect the money for the sale of the videotapes. When the business started making money, we started to hire other actors for the films. He goes on to explain how he eventually partnered with a man named Luis Villas-Boas, who was much more adept at business and helped him grow things. In 1999, I received a call from Luis Villas-Boas, who had seen the newspaper ad and he was interested in knowing more about my business. Luis and I decided to meet personally. We met and I explained to Luis how my business operated. Luis suggested that the business could be on the internet. I did not understand anything about how the business could operate via the internet, so Luis explained and showed me how it would operate on the internet. I found this idea very interesting, and that is when Luis and I began our partnership. The partnership was called Dragon Films. Luis helps Marco grows the business, he begins acquiring URLs, he begins hiring new staff, and that's where Danilo comes into the picture. And this is where it starts to get pretty funny, because Marco did not like Danilo. I have met Danilo. I don't remember exactly when I met him for the first time, but I'm sure it was some years after I started the business with Luis. As I have mentioned before, I am a fetishist and I consider myself a person that is a compulsive fetishist, and therefore I spend a lot of money on fetishism. Luis noticed this licentious behavior. It was at this time that Luis introduced me to Danilo. Our first meeting was at my home in Sao Paulo and Danilo came with Luis. I found out that the reason Luis introduced me to Danilo was to show me that if I could control my addiction, I could be a more successful person financially. When I was introduced to Danilo Crochet, I didn't like him. Since that time, I have seen Danilo a few times and always in social events, not ever in any business context. In fact, Marco's dislike for Danilo was so intense that he actually went out of his way to troll him. I always used my name in the fetish films that I produced. Leticia Miller used her name in the fetish films. Many of the actors in the fetish films used fictitious names. I decided, as a joke, to put the name Daniel Cross on a person in the fetish films. When I used the name Danny Cross, I already knew Danilo Crochet, and I knew that Daniel Cross is the American way of saying Danilo Crochet. So I thought it would be a joke to use the name Danny Cross, representing an influential person participating in my films. Sometime later, Luis told me that he had met Danilo and that he made a comment about his name joke and that Danilo became very mad because of this. Luis also told me that Danilo requested that his name be removed from all of the films. I didn't do this because I was not worried about the repercussions of this fact, and also because Danny Cross is not Danilo Crochet's name. He also commented on the legality of his films. The films that I make are not illegal in Brazil, and I didn't imagine they were illegal in the United States of America. I have already searched the internet, saw many American companies that sell this type of film on the internet, so I didn't imagine these films were illegal in the USA. Nobody ever told me that producing or having this type of film would be illegal in the USA. And because I don't participate in any of the administrative matters of the business, I don't know any of the contact from the American government informing us that these films, or the sale of these films, was considered illegal. If I knew that the sale of these films via the internet was illegal, I would have stopped because the money is not the main reason that I make these films. And finally, he remarked about what's perhaps the most important part. Was the poop real? I have already made fetish movies with scat/feces using chocolate instead of feces. Many actors make scat films, but they don't agree to eat feces. Ultimately, Marco's statement did no favors for Danilo, who is sentenced to 3 years probation and ordered to pay $98,000. And I imagine Marco had a good laugh when he got that news. As for the 2 Girls 1 Cup website, Cajones explains its decline. As mentioned earlier, the site was reaching its peak. The following month, December 12th to January 12th, the site brought in 8 million visits, to then followed by January-February, which brought in 5 million visits. At this point, we had been cut from all revenue sources due to the site nature and were losing money quick. We were barely breaking even for server costs and all the other good stuff. We eventually sold the site in February and washed our hands with it. The new owners did some super shady shit like require a credit card to view the video, which I was totally against for, but there wasn't anything I could have done. And although he could not legally give an exact figure, Cajones stated that it was at least 6 figures he was paid. And thus concludes the 2 Girls 1 Cup story. If you like this video, you'll probably also like my one about Rotten.com. I'm out of here. And once again, don't forget to check out my sponsor, Matchmasters. Scan the QR code or click the link in my description.